Hello, this video is going to talk about Chapter 18, Blood, specifically Objective 7. We're going to take a look at the significance between the ABO and the RH blood groups and blood transfusions. This chart right here pretty much summarizes the two different, the ABO blood group anyway. So looking at this first column right here, let me get my pen. Looking at this first column right here, this is showing a red blood cell that has antigens on its surface. So these antigens are these little lollipop looking like structures. So all of these little purple lollipops here, those are going to be antigens type A. Now, because this red blood cell has A antigens on its surface, this person is type A blood. In the serum, in the plasma, remember blood is made up of two main parts. You've got your fluid part and you've got your cellular part. The fluid part is plasma. In there, you're going to have antibodies, type B antibodies. Notice if you look, the shape of this antibody does not match the antigen on the marker on the red blood cell. That's not a match. Now let's look at group B. So a person who is type B blood has got different antigens on the surface of their red blood cells. Notice their antigens look kind of like a diamond. So that's how you identify this one as type B blood, because they have a B antigen on the surface of their red blood cells. But look at what's happening in the plasma for a person that has type B blood. They have antibodies against the A antigen. They have A antibodies. Now, if you look at a person who has type AB blood, look at what antigens they have on their surface. They have type A antigens and type B antigens. That's why they're type AB blood. See, they've got the A and the B antigens on the surface of their red blood cells. Now, what kind of antibodies do they have in the plasma? None. Which makes sense because you don't want an antibody against the A antigen and you don't want an antibody against the B antigen. Otherwise, you'll be attacking your own cells. Let's take a look at type O blood now. What kind of antigens does a person with type O blood have? If you look, they don't have any. They have no antigens on their red blood cells. But look at what they have in their plasma. Look at the antibodies they have in their plasma. They have antibodies against type A and they have antibodies against type B. So knowing this, let's take a look at, let me back up again. Let's take a look at who can kind of donate to who based on this information. So if you've got a person with type A blood, keep in mind they have antibodies against type B. Who can they get blood from? They can't get blood from anybody that has a B antigen, which means they can only receive from type A people and type O people. That's it. That's who they can receive from. They cannot receive from anybody that has a B antigen. So that gets out group B and group AB. Now, if we look at group B, if we look at the person that has type B blood, who can they receive blood from? Keep in mind, they have the antibodies against A. They can't receive anything from anybody that has an A as an antigen. They can receive from type O and they can receive from type B. That's it. They can't receive from type AB because, again, they've got the A antigen, which means group B blood, they're going to be able to go and destroy that type AB blood cell. Now, type AB, who can they receive from? Well, they have the antigen for type B and they have the antigen for type A. So who can they receive from? They have no antibodies. They can receive from A, They don't have any antibodies against type A blood. They can receive from B. They don't have any antibodies against type B blood. They can receive from AB. They don't have any antibodies, which would cause that problem. And they can receive from type O. O doesn't have any antigens anyway. So they don't have any antibodies to fight off any of these. So they can receive from everybody. Group AB, type AB blood, is the universal recipient. I'm just going to put a UR right here for universal recipient. They can receive from anybody. Now, for type O blood, who can they receive from? Look at these antibodies down here. They can't receive from anybody that has type A, and they can't receive from anybody that has type B. Well, that cuts out type A blood, that cuts out type B, that cuts out type AB. They can't receive from any of these people. They can only receive from O. That's it. They can only receive from type O blood. So we've identified our universal recipient. Now let's take a look at our universal donor. What group was able to donate to everybody? Type O is our universal donor. They can donate to everybody because they have no antigens. Sorry, I'm running with my mouse. That's why it takes me a minute. So we've got our universal recipient and our universal donor. So now let's throw in here in a little bit the RH group. We'll talk about the RH group in just a second. So what exactly happens when one blood type that you're not supposed to receive is donated to a person during a transfusion and it's the wrong blood type? What happens? So we have a person that has type A blood. Okay, so they've got A antigens on their surface. They've got B antibodies in their blood. So type B, we have down here, we have some B antigens on the surface, and our recipient has B antibodies in their plasma. So we have our person who is donating, and this is the person who is receiving. Look what happens. The patient's antibodies are reacting with the donor red blood cells. These antibodies are attacking the red blood cells, and notice they're all kind of clumping up together. That clumping is called agglutination. And what those antibodies are doing is tagging those red blood cells for destruction. Opsonization is what that's called. Now, because they're being tagged for destruction, the red blood cells will be destroyed. And when that happens, that's called hemolysis. So if you wanted to watch a transfusion reaction animation, here's a hyperlink for that. Now let's take a look at the RH factor. So again, you've got about 33 different blood types out there, with the ABO blood type being one of those 33 and the RH factor being another one of those 33. So we're only talking about 2 out of 33 blood groups here. These are the most common two. So with the RH system, they again, you're RH positive if you have the antigen present on the surface of your cell. If you are missing the RH antigen on the surface of your cell, then you're called RH negative. Now, an RH positive person has no antigens, no antibodies, against the RH positive antigen. So they're fine. They can receive from anybody. A person who doesn't have any antigens on their surface may have RH antibodies. May. We'll come back to that in a second. So now let's take a look at RH incompatibility. RH incompatibility occurs when an RH negative person is exposed to RH positive blood. Again, that RH negative person may have antibodies. And if that Rh positive blood shows up, meaning it's got the Rh antigen on the surface, guess what? That Rh negative person is going to have a problem with that. The patient's immune system will destroy the Rh positive red blood cells by making antibodies. Now, the Rh antigen is called the D antigen, so therefore the antibodies would be anti-D. Okay. So when you hear D, that's really the Rh antigen that we're talking about there. So here's the thing. When I back up here and I say, this Rh negative person may have Rh antibodies, maybe they don't. In the ABO system, these antibodies here that are in your plasma, you're born with those. Okay, so they're already there. They're always there. With the Rh people, you're not born, an Rh negative person is not born with antibodies against the Rh factor. They're only going to make those antibodies if they've been exposed to the Rh antigen. So if an Rh negative person receives Rh positive blood, that's when they'll start making the antibodies. So when we're talking about Rh incompatibility, again, once that Rh negative person is exposed to that Rh positive blood, the person is now sensitized. They now, again, you're not born with those Rh antibodies. They are created after first exposure to that Rh positive antigen. So taking a look at this with pregnancy and the first child. Rh incompatibility occurs when you have an Rh negative mom carrying an Rh positive baby. So usually during the gestational period, the 9 months where the mom's pregnant, you're not going to get mixing of fetal and maternal blood. It's going to stay separate. However, during the birthing process, things can occur where the baby's blood is going to mix with the mom's blood. When that happens, that Rh negative mom is now exposed to Rh positive blood and will now start making antibodies against that. Now, this isn't a problem for the first baby because the baby just was born. So again, they're not going to ever see those Rh antibodies that mom is now making because they're already, living their own life. However, with the second baby, these Rh antibodies, they're usually IgM type antibodies. They have the ability to cross the placenta. So this is why the first child, they don't have a problem because, again, mom isn't even making antibodies yet. So Rh incompatibility occurs in subsequent pregnancies after mom has been exposed. So when the mother is exposed to that Rh positive baby during delivery, the mom now starts making Rh antibodies. I think I said they were IgM. I messed that up, didn't I? So antibodies are usually IgM in nature. IgM can't cross the placenta, but IgG are going to be those, the type of Rh antibody is going to be IgG in class, and they can cross the placenta. So if the mother is priorly exposed to that Rh antigen, they are sensitized, and therefore those antibodies that she now has can cross the placenta and attack the baby's blood. The baby's red blood cells will be destroyed. And think about what happens. Those red blood cells that the baby has are carrying oxygen. If they're destroyed, the baby is no longer carrying oxygen. And this could eventually lead to death because it will cause problems with the organ failure and all this kind of stuff. So this just has some information about some Rh sensitization if you wanted to take a look at some other videos explaining it. So let's take a look at the question in set 7. A person with type O blood means they have what on the surface of their red blood cells and what located in the plasma? With type O, you don't have any antigens on the surface of your red blood cells, but you do have both A and B antibodies in the plasma. Okay, I'll give you a second for this one. True or false? People are born with antibodies for both the ABO and the Rh blood types. That would be false. You're born with antibodies in RO and ABO, but you are not born with the antibodies for RH. A person who is RH negative has to be exposed to the RH antigen before they will start making those antibodies against it. I'll give you a second to take a look at 3 and 4. Okay, so number 3, RH incompatibility occurs when an RH negative pregnant mother is exposed to the RH positive fetal red blood cells. And then number 4, what type of blood is the universal donor? Well, it's going to be the red blood cell that doesn't have any antigens at all. And the only blood type that has no antigens, either in the ABO or the RH system, will be an O negative individual. Okay, and that concludes set 7, objective 7 from the blood chapter.